morning I buried my wife and newborn daughter alone, my mother called to remind me not to post any sad photos online because it might ruin my sister's graduation party mood. I stood there in the funeral home parking lot, holding my phone like it was made of glass, listening to her voice explain how Bethany had worked so hard for her MBA and deserved this day to be perfect. The funeral director was waiting for me inside with paperwork about casket positions. My wife Melody and our 3-week-old daughter Hope were being prepared for viewing in room 3, and my mother was worried about Instagram aesthetics. "Devin, are you listening?" My mother Patricia's voice sharpened through the speaker. "I need to know you understand. No posting anything until after 9 tonight when the party winds down. Bethany's friends follow you, and we don't need that energy today." That energy. She meant grief. She meant the fact that my 27-year-old wife, who used to sing Disney songs in the shower, and my infant daughter, who had just learned to grip my finger, were lying in boxes 10 feet away from me. "They're dead, Mom." The words came out flat. I'd said them so many times in the past 4 days they'd lost their weight. "Melody and Hope are dead. I know that, sweetheart." "We all know that. But today is about Bethany. Can you please just give us this one day?" One day, like I had asked for anything more than for my family to show up, to stand beside me while I said goodbye to the woman who'd made me laugh every morning for 5 years and the baby we'd tried for 3 years to have. My name is Devin Thorne. I'm 29 years old, and until 4 days ago, I was the happiest man in Portland. I had everything that mattered. Melody would wake up at 5:30 every morning for her shift at the Children's Hospital, and she'd kiss my forehead before leaving, whispering, "Guard the princess," about Hope sleeping in her bassinet. I'd work from home, designing software between bottle feedings and diaper changes, sending Melody photos of Hope's facial expressions with ridiculous captions that made her laugh between patient rounds. My family knew this. They'd been there for it all. My mother, Patricia, 58, and still highlighting every family achievement in her annual Christmas letter, had thrown Melody's baby shower. My father, Richard, 61 and freshly retired from managing bank portfolios, had helped me assemble Hope's crib while lecturing me about college savings accounts. My sister Bethany, 22 and glowing with academic achievement, had bought Hope 12 designer outfits she'd never get to wear. My brother Kyle, 31, and billing more hours at his law firm than anyone else, had already started a trust fund in Hope's name. They all claimed to love them. Past tense now. The fire started in the garage from 40-year-old wiring the home inspector had marked as functional but worth monitoring. I was in Portland for a software presentation, my first overnight trip since Hope was born. Melody had joked about being fine alone, said she'd binge-watch her reality shows without my commentary. The smoke killed them before the flames ever reached the bedroom. The firefighters said they probably never woke up, that it was peaceful. But how could dying at 27 with your 3-week-old daughter be peaceful? My phone buzzed with a text from Bethany. "Mom says you're being difficult." "It's just one day, Devin. We postponed the dinner reservations to 8 so you'd have time to do your thing first." My thing. Burying my family. Another text, this one from Kyle. "Hey bro, I know this is hard, but Bethany only graduates once. The country club is already decorated. Maybe do a morning service. More traditional anyway." Traditional. Like there was a proper etiquette for choosing a graduation party over your nephew's funeral. I walked into the funeral home where Melody's parents, Francis and Joan, were already waiting. They'd flown in from Michigan immediately, hadn't even gone to their hotel yet. Joan was holding a small stuffed rabbit, the same one Melody had slept with as a child, to place in Hope's casket. Francis stood when he saw me, his eyes red and swollen behind his glasses. "Where's your family, son?" he asked gently. "They have a prior commitment," I said. Joan's face shifted from grief to something harder. "A prior commitment?" "My sister's graduation party." Apparently, the country club has a strict cancellation policy. Francis took off his glasses, cleaned them slowly, a gesture I'd seen him do 100 times when he was trying to control his temper. Your 3-week-old daughter and wife are dead, and they're at a party? It was planned 6 months ago, I said, repeating my mother's words like they might make more sense out loud. They didn't. Melody's best friend Naomi arrived then, carrying 3 sunflowers because Melody had always said roses at funerals were too expected. She hugged me, smelling like the vanilla perfume Melody had bought her last Christmas, and whispered, "Where is everyone?" "This is everyone," I told her. The funeral director, a soft-spoken man named Mr. Garrison, approached carefully. "Mr. Thorne, we can wait a bit longer if you'd like. Sometimes traffic can delay." "No one else is coming," I said. "My mother, Patricia, is hosting a graduation party for my sister. My father, Richard, is there supporting her. My brother Kyle is giving a toast about achievement and family pride. And my sister Bethany is accepting congratulations on her MBA while my wife and daughter wait in room 3. Mr. Garrison's professional composure cracked slightly. In 40 years of funeral service, I'm sure he'd seen a lot, but apparently not this. "Should we proceed then?" he asked quietly. I looked at the empty chairs we'd set up, 50 of them because Melody had so many friends from the hospital, because Hope's birth announcement had generated 97 likes on Facebook from family members who'd sworn they couldn't wait to meet her. Empty chairs that would stay empty because the people who should have filled them were raising champagne glasses across town. "Yes," I said, "let's proceed." As we walked toward room 3, my phone rang one more time. Richard, my father, the man who taught me to throw a baseball and change a tire, and supposedly what it meant to be a man. "Devin," his voice was carefully measured, the way it got when he was about to negotiate something. "Your mother is upset. This division in the family isn't what Melody would have wanted." I stopped walking. Behind me, Francis, Joan, and Naomi stopped too. "Division?" I said. "Dad, my wife and daughter are in caskets. Your granddaughter never got to see her first month. Your daughter-in-law died thinking I'd come home the next morning to hear about Hope's first real smile. And you're worried about family division because I won't pretend their funeral matters less than Bethany's party? That's not what we're saying." "Then, what are you saying?" Silence. Then, "The photographer is here. We need to take family photos. Just come for an hour after. We'll all go to the cemetery together tomorrow." "The burial is today." "Son, be reasonable." I hung up. Then I turned off my phone completely, something I hadn't done since Hope was born, and I was terrified of missing an emergency call. But the emergency had already happened. The worst had already come and gone while I was in a Portland hotel room, probably asleep when the smoke filled their lungs. Mr. Garrison opened the door to room 3. 2 caskets. One standard size in white because Melody had loved white furniture despite how impractical it was. One impossibly small in pale pink because that's what they had for infants. And what else do you choose for a 3-week-old who never got to have a favorite color? Melody looked like she was sleeping, wearing the blue dress she'd worn to our rehearsal dinner because her wedding dress had burned. Hope was wrapped in a hospital blanket Joan had brought, the one from her birth that still had her footprints on it. They'd positioned them so it looked like Melody was holding her, the way she'd held her every night for 3 weeks, singing off-key lullabies and promising adventures they'd never have. This was my family now. Not the people across town celebrating academic achievement, but these bodies that had been my whole world, and the 3 people who'd shown up to say goodbye to them. "She was the best pediatric nurse we ever had," Naomi said quietly. "Kids would request her by name. She kept every thank you card in a box under her desk." "Hope looks just like her at that age," Joan added, touching the casket gently. "Same little nose, same perfect mouth." Francis put his hand on my shoulder. "They were loved, son. That's what matters. They were deeply loved. Were, past tense. Everything was past tense now except the absence, which would be permanently present, and the choice my family had made, which would be forever. The funeral began with 4 people in attendance and 46 empty chairs, while across town, my family toasted to success and achievement, carefully not mentioning the son and brother who'd chosen grief over celebration, who'd chosen the dead over the living, who'd chosen to honor love that ended over ambition that was just beginning. They would later say I should have been more understanding. I would later build an empire on the foundation of their absence. But in that moment, I was just a 29-year-old man saying goodbye to everything that mattered, while everyone who should have stood beside me raised glasses 15 miles away, pretending that some losses could be postponed until a more convenient time. Life before the tragedy was beautifully ordinary in the way that makes you believe it will last forever. Melody and I had been married for 5 years, together for 7, and we still texted each other stupid jokes during the day like teenagers. She worked as a pediatric nurse at Children's Medical Center, coming home with stories about brave 6-year-olds and anxious parents. I designed software from our home office, building systems that helped companies track inventory while she helped families track milestones of recovery. We'd bought the house in Riverside 4 months before Hope was born. 2 stories, 3 bedrooms, and a kitchen with windows that caught the morning light exactly the way Melody had always dreamed. The previous owners had left a swing set in the backyard, and Melody had stood there, 7 months pregnant, pushing the empty swing and saying, "In a few years, she'll be begging for underdog pushes." The nursery had been our weekend project for 2 months. Melody had researched every paint brand for VOC levels, every crib for safety ratings, every mobile for developmental benefits. We'd painted the wall sunset orange after she'd read 3 studies about how warm colors stimulated infant cognitive development. I'd assembled the furniture while she sat in the doorway, reading instructions out loud and laughing when I inevitably had to take something apart and start over. "You're building it with love," she'd said when I cursed at the changing table for the 4th time. "Hope will know. She'll feel it every time we lay her down." My family had been part of everything then. Patricia had driven us to the hospital when Melody went into labor 3 weeks early, running red lights while Richard called ahead to alert the staff. Kyle had paced the waiting room for 14 hours, billing time on his laptop between checking for updates. Bethany had arrived with balloons before we'd even announced Hope's birth, somehow knowing through Sister's intuition that everything had gone perfectly. Those first 3 weeks were a blur of firsts. First night home, when Melody and I took turns standing over the bassinet, making sure Hope was still breathing. First bath, which made Hope scream like we were torturing her while Melody cried from postpartum hormones, and I tried to comfort both of them with a soggy towel. First time Hope gripped my finger with her entire hand, her strength surprising me, making me understand what people meant when they said your heart could live outside your body. Patricia had visited every other day, bringing casseroles and unsolicited advice about sleep schedules. She'd held Hope while Melody showered, cooing about how the baby had the Thorne family chin, our grandfather's eyes, Bethany's delicate fingers. She'd already bought professional photography sessions for Hope's first year, scheduled milestone celebrations, planned which preschool would best prepare her for the academic excellence expected of a Thorne. "She's going to do amazing things," Patricia had said, rocking Hope in the chair that had been in our family for 3 generations. "I can feel it. This one's special." Richard had been quieter in his affection, but no less present. He'd show up after work with diapers he'd bought in bulk, college brochures he'd collected just to have options, and would hold Hope while watching the financial news, explaining market fluctuations to her like she was taking notes. "Never too early to understand compound interest," he'd say seriously, while Hope slept against his chest, tiny fist wrapped around his tie. The Sunday before I left for Portland was the last time we were all together. Family dinner at my parents' house, the dining room table extended to accommodate everyone. Melody had dressed Hope in one of Bethany's gifted outfits. a ridiculous designer onesie that said Future CEO in gold letters. Kyle had brought his new girlfriend, someone from his firm who smiled nervously and held hope like she was handling evidence. To family, Richard had toasted, raising his wine glass while Melody raised her water, still avoiding alcohol while breastfeeding. To new beginnings and bright futures. We'd all clinked glasses, even tapping one gently against Hope's bottle. Bethany had talked about her upcoming graduation, the job offers she was fielding, the party plans that were growing more elaborate by the day. Patricia had shown us fabric samples for tablecloths, seeking Melody's opinion on ivory versus champagne. "What do you think, Mel?" she'd asked. "You have such good taste." "Ivory," Melody had said, "it photographs better. Years from now, when you look back, you'll want pictures that show how perfect everything was." Perfect. That word haunted me now. The night before Portland, Melody had been anxious about me leaving. Not dramatically, just small things. Double-checking my flight information. Packing snacks I wouldn't eat. Making me promise to call when I landed. It's one night, I'd laughed, kissing her forehead as she nursed Hope in our bed. "You'll probably enjoy the peace." "There's no peace with a newborn," she'd said. "But I'll miss you anyway." "We both will." She'd started keeping a journal after Hope was born, documenting tiny moments she didn't want to forget. I'd found it, later, after everything, on her nightstand with a pen still marking her place. The last entry was from that morning. "Devin's going to Portland today." First time away from Hope. He kissed her goodbye 17 times, counted. She smiled, really smiled, not gas like everyone says. Can't wait to tell him when he gets home tomorrow. Thinking about making his favorite dinner, that pasta thing his mom taught me. Want him to know we're fine, we're good, we're whole. This little family of 3 is everything I prayed for in those years of negative tests and temperature charts. Sometimes I watch him hold her and think my heart might actually burst from happiness. Is that possible? Can you die from too much joy? If so, what a way to go. She'd ended every entry the same way. Another day of ordinary magic with my loves. The fire took that ordinary magic at 2:14 a.m. Faulty wiring in the garage, the inspector would later say. Probably sparked around midnight, but smoldered slowly. The smoke detectors we'd tested the week before had worked, but carbon monoxide had filled the upstairs first. They'd never woken up. The firefighters found them in bed, Melody curved around Hope, protecting her even in unconsciousness. I'd gotten the call at 3:47 a.m. in my Portland hotel. The polite distance of official notification. "Mr. Thorne? This is Captain Reynolds with Riverside Fire Department. There's been an incident at your home." Incident. Like it was a fender bender or a broken window, not the end of everything that mattered. I'd driven the 3 hours home at speeds that should have killed me too. Some desperate part of my brain convinced that if I could just get there fast enough, I could undo it, fix it, save them. But they were already gone, had been gone before anyone even noticed the flames. The house stood partially intact, a blackened skeleton of our dreams. Hope's nursery with its sunset orange walls was ash. The kitchen, where Melody had danced while cooking, was charred beyond recognition. The ordinary magic we'd built together had burned away in minutes, leaving only absence and the terrible weight of continuing to breathe when they couldn't. The funeral was scheduled for Saturday at 2 o'clock. I'd chosen the time carefully, early enough that people wouldn't have to rush through lunch, late enough that those traveling could arrive that morning. The funeral director, Mr. Garrison, had helped me plan every detail while I moved through the decisions like a sleepwalker. White roses because Melody loved them. The song Blackbird by the Beatles because she'd hummed it to Hope every night. An open casket viewing before the service because her coworkers needed to say goodbye. Thursday evening, 2 days before the funeral, my mother called while I was sitting in what remained of our living room, salvaging photo albums that had survived in a fireproof safe Melody had insisted we buy. "Devin, we need to talk about Saturday." Patricia's voice had that careful tone she used when managing difficult clients at her event planning business. "There's a situation." "What situation?" I was holding our wedding album, the edges slightly warped from heat, but the photos intact, Melody laughing as cake frosting hit my nose. Our first dance to a song I could no longer remember. "Bethany's graduation party is Saturday. You know this. We've had it planned for 6 months." The album slipped from my hands. "Mom, the funeral is Saturday." "I know, sweetheart, and that's the situation we need to discuss. The country club can't reschedule. We'll lose our deposit, and Aunt Vivian already flew in from Seattle. Could you possibly move the funeral to Sunday?" I stood up so fast the room spun. Move the funeral? Or even Monday? Monday would give everyone time to adjust their schedules. Adjust their schedules? My voice was rising, but I couldn't stop it. "Mom, my wife and daughter are dead. They're in a morgue right now, waiting to be buried. And you want me to leave them there longer so you don't lose a deposit?" "It's not about the money," she said quickly. "It's about Bethany. She's worked so hard for this degree. She deserves to celebrate without the shadow of, well, this hanging over everything. This, the death of my family reduced to an inconvenient shadow." Friday morning, my father showed up at my hotel room. I'd been staying at a Marriott downtown because I couldn't face another night in that broken house or my childhood room at their place. Richard stood in the doorway, suit impeccable despite the early hour, holding 2 cups of coffee like a peace offering. "Your mother means well," he started before even saying hello. "Does she?" I took the coffee, but didn't invite him in. "Because it sounds like she means to prioritize a party over her granddaughter's funeral." Richard's jaw tightened. "That's not fair, Devin. Bethany has been planning this for months. The whole family is coming." "The whole family," I repeated, "including Melody and Hope? Oh, wait, they can't make it. They're dead." "Don't be crude. Don't be heartless." We stood there, father and son, strangers despite sharing DNA. Richard straightened his tie, a nervous gesture I'd seen 1,000 times during difficult conversations. "The funeral home has evening slots available," he said finally. 6 o'clock. You could do the service then, and we could all attend after the party." "After the party," I said slowly, tasting each word. "You want to come to my wife and daughter's funeral after celebrating with champagne and canapes?" "We want to support both of you," Richard said. "Bethany needs us too. Bethany needs you to celebrate her MBA. Melody and Hope need you to acknowledge they existed, that they mattered, that their deaths are worth more than an inconvenient scheduling conflict." Richard set down his coffee cup on the hallway table. "You're being emotional. My family just died. We're your family." "Are you?" The question hung between us. Because family shows up. Family doesn't treat a funeral like an optional after-party. That afternoon, Kyle came by with Bethany. They found me at the funeral home, making final arrangements with Mr. Garrison. I was choosing between 2 verses for Hope's headstone when they walked in. Kyle in his lawyer suit, Bethany in designer jeans that probably cost more than Melody's monthly car payment. "This is ridiculous," Bethany said without preamble. "You're tearing the family apart over timing." "I'm not the one who scheduled a party on the same day as a funeral," I said, not looking up from the headstone catalog. "I scheduled it 6 months ago," she shot back. "How was I supposed to know?" "You're right," I said, finally meeting her eyes. "You couldn't have known they'd die. But you know now, and you're still choosing the party." Kyle stepped forward, his lawyer voice activated. "Let's find a compromise. What if we did a small memorial service next week? Just family. That way, everyone can attend both events." Both events, I said, like they're equal. Like burying my 3-week-old daughter carries the same weight as toasting Bethany's diploma. That's not what he meant, Bethany said, but her face flushed. Then what did he mean? Explain it to me. Explain how you can stand here, in a funeral home, looking at headstones for a baby who never got to see her first month, and still think your graduation party matters more. Bethany's eyes filled with tears, but they were angry tears. It's not fair. I worked for 2 years for this degree. I earned this celebration. And Hope earned what? 3 weeks of life before dying in her mother's arms? Stop trying to guilt us, Kyle said. This is manipulation. This is grief, I corrected. This is what it looks like when your brother's family dies, and you ask him to reschedule the funeral so you can eat shrimp cocktail and take photos for Instagram. Mr. Garrison, who had been quietly organizing papers, cleared his throat. Perhaps I could offer some perspective. In my 40 years in this business, I've seen many families struggle with scheduling, but I've never seen anyone asked to postpone a funeral for a party. The silence that followed was deafening. Kyle's face went red. Bethany looked at the floor. We're not asking him to postpone, Kyle said finally. We're asking him to be reasonable. Reasonable, I repeated. Your definition of reasonable is me burying my family alone while you toast Bethany's success. My definition of reasonable is expecting my family to show up for the worst day of my life. You won't be alone, Bethany said quietly. Melody's parents will be there, but mine won't. She had no answer for that. That evening, Patricia called one more time. I was back in my hotel room, surrounded by funeral programs I'd designed myself because no one else had offered to help. Hope's photo on the front, barely 3 weeks old, eyes still learning to focus, mouth curved in what might have been her first real smile. Devin, Patricia said, her voice harder now, the warmth gone. I'm going to say this once. We love you. We loved Melody and Hope. But Bethany is our daughter too, and she deserves this day. If you can't understand that, if you insist on making this a choice between them, then you're the one dividing this family. I'm not making it a choice, I said. I'm asking you to show up for a funeral. 2 hours, that's all. 2 hours to say goodbye to your granddaughter and daughter-in-law. While Bethany's guests wonder where we are, while she has to explain that her parents are at a funeral instead of celebrating her achievement. Yes, I said simply. Yes, that's exactly what I'm asking. Then you're asking too much. The line went dead. Patricia Thorne, who had held Hope while she slept, who had planned her preschool future, who had posted 17 photos of her birth on Facebook, had decided that her granddaughter's funeral was too much to ask. I sat there, holding the funeral programs, looking at Hope's face, and made my own decision. They could choose the party. But that choice would echo through every success that followed, every achievement they celebrated, every toast they made to family unity. Because some choices can't be undone, some absences can't be forgiven, and some conflicts reveal not just who people are, but who they've always been. I buried them alone, except for Melody's parents and Naomi. The funeral service was held at Riverside Memorial Chapel, the same place where Melody and I had attended her grandmother's service 3 years earlier. She'd held my hand that day and whispered, "When it's my time, I want people to remember the laughter, not just the loss." I tried to honor that wish, but it's hard to find laughter when you're burying a 27-year-old woman and a 3-week-old baby. Francis gave the eulogy. His voice broke twice, once when he described Melody's first day of nursing school, how she'd called home crying because a child patient had died, questioning if she was strong enough for this career. The second time was when he talked about holding Hope for the first time, how she'd grabbed his thumb and he'd seen 3 generations of his family in her tiny fingers. Melody saved lives, he said to the mostly empty chapel. She held scared children's hands through procedures, sang them songs to ease their fear, stayed past her shifts to make sure they weren't alone. Hope never got the chance to save anyone, but she saved Devin and Melody from ever wondering what true love looked like. 3 weeks. That's all she had, but she filled those weeks with more love than some people manage in 90 years. Joan read a letter she'd written to Hope the day after she was born, but never got to send. It talked about the blanket she was knitting for Hope's first Christmas, the recipes she'd planned to teach her, the stories about Melody's childhood she'd saved up to embarrass her daughter with someday. The letter ended with, "You were wanted, little one. You were prayed for and cherished and will be missed every day until we meet again." Naomi spoke about Melody's work, reading cards from the children's ward that had arrived all morning. One from a mother whose son Melody had comforted through chemotherapy. Another from a teenager who said Melody was the only nurse who talked to her like a person, not a patient. The last one was from a 6-year-old, written in crayon, "Miss Melody, my mom says you're with the angels now. Thank you for making my surgery not scary. I drew you a picture of heaven. I put a playground there for your baby." Mr. Garrison had to bring extra tissues twice. After the service, we drove to Willowbrook Cemetery. The hearse moved slowly through Saturday afternoon traffic while people went about their normal lives. I watched from the funeral car as we passed a youth soccer game, a farmer's market, a couple taking wedding photos in the park. Life continuing while we drove toward 2 holes in the ground. The burial plot was on a small hill overlooking a pond where ducks gathered. I'd chosen it that morning because Melody had loved feeding ducks at the park near our first apartment. Such a small thing to remember, but grief makes you cling to details like life rafts. As they lowered the caskets, my phone buzzed repeatedly in my pocket. I didn't check it. Later, I'd find 17 missed calls from Patricia, not asking about the funeral but reminding me that if I changed my mind, the party would run until 10, and they'd saved me a seat at the family table. That night, in our empty house that still smelled of smoke beneath the industrial cleaning chemicals, I walked through the salvageable rooms. The nursery was destroyed, but I'd saved a few things from Hope's dresser that had been partially shielded from the fire. Her hospital bracelet, the tiny hat they'd put on her minutes after birth, a single sock so small it fit on my thumb. In our bedroom closet, protected by winter coats, I found Melody's journal. The leather cover was slightly warped, but the pages remained intact. I sat on the floor and read it from the beginning. 3 years of entries, our engagement, wedding planning, the miscarriage we'd never told anyone about, the positive pregnancy test that led to Hope. Every page was Melody talking to her future self, preserving moments she didn't want to forget. Her last entry, written the morning of the fire while I was packing for Portland. Devin's going to Portland, but I have this feeling something amazing is coming. Hope smiled today, real smiled, not gas. I can't wait to tell him when he gets home. She's starting to look more like him, especially when she's concentrating on something. That little furrow between her eyebrows. God, I love them both so much it actually hurts. Good hurt, though. The kind that means you're alive and grateful and exactly where you're supposed to be. I closed the journal and made 2 decisions that would reshape everything that followed. First, I would honor their memory by building something that mattered. Not just success for success's sake, like Bethany's MBA celebration, but something that would prevent other families from experiencing this loss. Second, my family had made their choice clear. They'd chosen celebration over grief, achievement over compassion, convenience over love. That choice would stand as the defining moment of our relationship. Not because I wanted revenge, but because some bridges, once burned, illuminate the path forward. I called Naomi that night. She answered on the first ring, probably worried I might do something desperate. "I want to start a company," I said without preamble. "A home safety system. Something that would have saved them. Devin, you just buried them today. Maybe take some time first." Time for what? To sit in this house and replay every moment? To wonder if better smoke detectors would have made a difference? To think about how Hope never got to roll over or laugh or say her first word? Naomi was quiet for a moment. What do you need? A partner. Someone who understands marketing. Someone who knew Melody and understands why this matters. I'm in, she said immediately. What are we calling it? I looked at the journal in my lap, at Melody's handwriting describing Hope's first smile. Safe haven. Every product, every system, every sensor we make will be about giving families what we lost. Time, the chance to escape, the opportunity to survive. And your family? Naomi asked carefully. Have they called? They're at Bethany's party. Posted photos on Instagram an hour ago. Kyle giving a toast. Mom and Dad dancing. Bethany in her cap and gown, laughing. While you were at the cemetery. While I was at the cemetery. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then Naomi said, They'll regret this. Maybe, but regret doesn't resurrect the dead or undo choices. They picked their priority. Now I'll pick mine. I spent the rest of that night planning. By dawn, I had 20 pages of notes, product ideas, safety features, marketing angles, every idea built on a simple premise. No family should have to bury their loved ones because of preventable failures. No one should have to stand at a graveside alone because their family thought other things mattered more. Within a week, I'd sold the house, keeping only the salvageable belongings and the insurance payout. Within 2 weeks, I'd filed for the LLC, with Naomi as co-founder and Melody's parents as initial investors. For Hope, Francis said when he handed me the check. So her 3 weeks mean something more. They would. Every smoke detector we sold, every family we protected, every second of warning we provided would be because a 3-week-old baby and her mother died while the people who should have mourned them raised champagne glasses across town. The turning point wasn't the fire. It wasn't even the funeral. It was the moment I understood that family isn't defined by blood or obligation, but by who shows up when showing up is all that matters. My biological family had made their choice, prioritizing a party over a funeral, comfort over compassion, ease over love. Now I would make mine, building something from grief that would matter more than any graduation, any celebration, any achievement they could toast. Because Melody and Hope deserved more than empty chairs at their funeral. They deserved a legacy that would outlive us all. 1 year after the funeral, Safe Haven's value hit $50 million. The morning our CFO confirmed the valuation, I stood in our new office overlooking downtown Portland, holding the same coffee mug Melody had given me for our anniversary with "World's Okayest Programmer" printed on it. Naomi walked in with a champagne bottle and 2 glasses, then saw the mug in my hands and quietly put them away. The marketing team wants to do a major campaign, she said instead. Billboards, digital ads, the whole thing. They want to put your face on it. My face. The founder's story sells. Young widower turns tragedy into purpose. It's compelling. I thought about it for 3 days. The last thing I wanted was my grief displayed on highways, but our message was saving lives. In 12 months, Safe Haven systems had prevented 15 house fires from becoming tragedies. 15 families who got out in time because our interconnected sensors detected danger faster than traditional smoke alarms. Do it, I told Naomi. But the tagline has to be about them, not me. The billboards went up on a Thursday morning. My face, larger than life, staring out over highways and intersections across the city. The tagline read, "Because every second matters when protecting who you love, Safe Haven, founded in memory of Melody and Hope Thorne." The first call came at 9:17 a.m. from Kyle. "Devin, holy hell," his voice was breathless. "I just drove past a massive billboard with your face on I-5. My paralegal saw another one downtown. What is this?" "It's my company," I said simply, continuing to review sensor specifications. "Your company? Since when do you have a company?" since my wife and daughter died and I needed their deaths to mean something. Silence. Then, why didn't you tell us? When would I have told you? During the funeral you didn't attend? At the Sunday dinners I'm no longer invited to? During the holidays you celebrated without me? That's not fair. You're the one who cut us off. I buried my family alone, Kyle. You made a toast about achievement at Bethany's party while I stood over their graves. Who cut off whom? He hung up without answering. Patricia called 20 minutes later, her voice bright with sudden interest that hadn't existed 12 months ago. Sweetheart, we just saw your billboard on Route 9. Richard nearly crashed the car. We had no idea you'd started a business. This is wonderful. We should celebrate. I'll plan something spectacular. Invite all our friends. The Henderson's son is a venture capitalist. You should meet him. I'm not interested in a party, Mom. Don't be silly. This is a massive achievement. $50 million? That's what the article says. Forbes Online mentioned you this morning. You didn't call when Melody and Hope died. You didn't come to their funeral, but Forbes writes an article and suddenly you're interested? That was a complicated situation. It was a funeral. Nothing complicated about it. Devin, please. Let us make this right. We're proud of you. Proud of what? The money? The recognition? Or proud that I found a way to make my daughter's death profitable? That's cruel. That's honest. You weren't proud when I was just a grieving husband and father. You weren't proud when I needed you. You're proud now because there's something to brag about at your country club lunches. Bethany's approach was different. She texted, not called. Saw your billboard by my office. My coworkers are asking if I can get them a discount. Family rate? I didn't respond. An hour later, this is really petty, Devin. Using your success to punish us. Still, I didn't respond. Finally, Hope would want us to be a family. That one made me put my phone down and walk out of my office. Hope never got the chance to want anything beyond milk and warmth and her mother's voice. She never got to want a family or forgiveness or anything else Bethany was projecting onto her memory. The real revelation came when Channel 7 ran a feature story that evening. They'd done their research, interviewed the families we'd saved, dug into the founding story. The reporter, a woman named Sandra Chen, stood in front of our headquarters. Safe Haven has saved 15 families in its first year of operation, she said to the camera. But the story behind its founding is both heartbreaking and inspiring. Devin Thorne lost his wife Melody and 3-week-old daughter Hope in a house fire last year. What makes this tragedy even more poignant is that Thorne buried his family alone, his immediate family choosing to attend a graduation party instead of the funeral. She didn't name them, but she didn't have to. Portland's business community was small. People knew the Thornes, Richard's former banking colleagues, Patricia's event planning clients, Bethany's new co-workers, Kyle's law firm partners. The interview clips followed. A mother crying as she described how Safe Haven's system had given her the extra 30 seconds needed to get her children out. A firefighter explaining how our technology had made impossible rescues possible. The 12 families we'd saved, standing together, holding a sign that said, "Alive because of Melody and Hope." Then they showed the photo I'd provided, Melody in the hospital bed, exhausted but radiant, holding Hope for the first time. Both of them perfect, both of them gone. We reached out to the Thorne family for comment, Sandra Chen continued, but they declined to be interviewed. However, we did obtain this statement from Patricia Thorne. I hadn't known they'd contacted her. I turned up the volume. Patricia's voice, trying to sound composed. We support Devin completely and are proud of his success. The scheduling conflict was unfortunate, but we've always been a close family. Sandra Chen's follow-up was brutal in its simplicity. When asked if they attended the funeral, Mrs. Thorne ended the call. My phone exploded with messages. business associates offering support, Melody's hospital colleagues expressing disgust at my family, investors wanting meetings. But the one that mattered came from Francis, Melody's father. "Saw the news," his text read. "Melody would be proud." Hope, too, somehow. You gave their story meaning. That's all any parent wants for their child's story. That night I stood in front of the billboard near the cemetery, my face, 30 feet tall, staring down at traffic. But it wasn't really about me. It was about the empty chairs at their funeral becoming filled boardrooms. It was about absence transforming into presence. It was about choosing to build something from loss that my family's presence couldn't have created. Patricia called once more, late that night. This time, Richard was on the line too, speakerphone echoing in their kitchen where we'd once held Sunday dinners. "The Hendersons saw the news," Patricia said, her voice tight. "So did the Clearys, and the entire country club board." "Good," I said. "Good?" Richard's voice cracked. "Our reputation is ruined. People are calling us heartless. Bethany's firm is questioning her character. Kyle's partners are concerned about his judgment. You made a choice. Choices have consequences. We didn't know it would become this," Patricia said, and for the first time she sounded her age. "We didn't know you'd build something significant." There it was, the truth. They hadn't come to the funeral because they hadn't thought my grief would amount to anything worth witnessing. But success? Success was worth their time. "You're right," I said. "You didn't know. Because you didn't show up to find out." The billboard stayed up for 3 months. Safe Haven grew to $100 million valuation by year 2. We saved 43 families. Each one sent flowers to Melody and Hope's graves, strangers honoring them more than their own family had. But the climax wasn't the money or the recognition. It was the moment my family realized that their absence at the funeral had become the foundation of something they could never be part of. They'd chosen Bethany's moment over Melody and Hope's farewell, and that choice had become the story everyone knew. Success hadn't been my revenge. It had been my resurrection. And they'd missed that too. The billboards stayed up for 3 months. Safe Haven grew into a $100 million company within 18 months. We expanded beyond fire prevention into comprehensive home protection, carbon monoxide detection, flood sensors, break-in alerts, medical emergency responses. Every product carried the same promise that drove our founding. No family should lose what matters most to preventable tragedy. I moved the company headquarters to a building 6 blocks from the cemetery. Some called it morbid. I called it accountability. Every morning, I could see the hill where Melody and Hope were buried. Every evening, I watched the sun set over their graves from my office window. It kept me focused on why we existed. Patricia sent a check for $100,000 14 months after the funeral. It arrived by certified mail with a note written on her personal stationery, the same cream-colored paper she'd used for Bethany's graduation invitations. "For the Hope Thorne Foundation," the note read, "to help families who cannot afford your systems. We know we cannot undo our absence, but perhaps we can contribute to her legacy." I cashed the check and sent back a receipt. Nothing more. The Hope Thorne Foundation provided free Safe Haven systems to low-income families. Within 6 months, we'd installed 1,200 units in subsidized housing across Oregon. One of those systems saved a family of 5 in southeast Portland 2 weeks before Christmas. The mother sent a photo of her children standing in front of their apartment, alive because of a detection system they never could have afforded. "Tell Hope's grandparents their donation saved us," she wrote. I didn't. At the 2-year mark, Safe Haven employed 300 people. Our annual company meeting fell on a Thursday in September. I stood in front of our team, holding the same photo I'd carried in my wallet since Hope was born. Melody in the hospital, hair messy, no makeup, holding our daughter like she was made of spun glass and miracles. "Every life we save," I told them, "is because 2 lives were lost while the people who should have grieved them chose to celebrate instead." But here's what I learned. Family isn't about blood or obligation or showing up when it's convenient. Family is about choosing to be present when presence is all someone needs. I paused, looking at the faces of my employees. Many had become friends. Some had become closer than that. My wife and daughter died alone in a fire. I buried them alone in the ground. But they live on in every alarm that sounds, every family that escapes, every second that matters. You've become the family that shows up. You've given meaning to loss that could have meant nothing. Thank you. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. Someone started crying. Then someone else. Naomi had to take over the rest of the presentation while I stood in the bathroom, pressing cold water to my face, trying to reconcile success with sorrow. 3 months later, I visited their graves on Hope's would-be 3rd birthday. She would have been walking, talking, probably demanding whatever cartoon was popular. Melody would have been planning an over-the-top princess party despite my protests about commercialism. The cemetery was quiet, except for 2 families I didn't recognize, laying flowers at the headstones. As I approached, a woman turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Are you Devon?" she asked. I nodded. "Safe Haven saved my boys," she said. "Twins, 3 years old, same age as Hope would have been, we came to say thank you." The other family, an elderly couple, stepped forward. "Our granddaughter," the man said. "She was sleeping when the fire started. Your system, it gave us time." They stayed while I arranged fresh sunset orange roses in the vases. We didn't talk much, but their presence meant everything. Strangers who understood that grief shared is grief diminished, that gratitude expressed is love multiplied. That evening, I found a voicemail from Bethany. Her voice was different. Older, maybe wiser. "Devon, I know you won't call back, but I need to say this. I got engaged last month. His name is Aaron. When I told him about our family, about what we did, he asked me a question I couldn't answer. He asked if my graduation was worth losing my brother. It wasn't. Nothing was. I'm sorry we chose wrong. I'm sorry we taught you that achievement matters more than attendance. I'm sorry Hope never got to know her aunt who would have loved her imperfectly but completely. The party, the degree, none of it matters now. Just empty accomplishments without family to share them with." I didn't call back, but I did send a wedding gift when the invitation inevitably arrived. A safe haven system for their new home. The card read, "May you never need it," from Hope's father. Kyle reached out once, through his law firm. A formal letter requesting a meeting about potential estate planning given Safe Haven's value. I responded through my own lawyer. No meeting necessary, everything goes to the Hope Thorne Foundation upon my death. He never contacted me again. Richard developed heart problems the year Safe Haven went international. Patricia called from the hospital, her voice small and frightened. "He's asking for you," she said. "He wants to apologize before surgery." "Tell him I hope the surgery goes well," I said. "Tell him I forgive him, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Some choices can't be undone, only outlived." He survived the surgery. They sent a card every year on Hope's birthday after that, acknowledging her brief existence in a way they hadn't when it mattered. 5 years after the fire, Safe Haven operated in 14 countries. We'd saved over 10,000 families. Time magazine ran a cover story. The company born from ashes. They wanted to focus on the family reconciliation angle, the healing, the forgiveness. I told them the truth instead. "There's no healing here," I said, "just purpose." My family chose a graduation party over a funeral. That choice created a chasm that success can't bridge. But from that chasm came clarity. Melody and Hope deserved better than empty chairs at their funeral. Now they have millions of guardians, protecting families they'll never meet. That's not healing. That's transformation. The interviewer, a young woman with kind eyes, asked the question everyone eventually asked. Do you think you'll ever fully forgive your family? I already have, I said, but forgiveness doesn't resurrect relationships. It just removes the poison from the wound. They're forgiven for choosing celebration over grief. But that choice revealed who they are, and who they are isn't who I need. The article's final paragraph included a quote from Patricia, given through her publicist. We pray for reconciliation daily and celebrate Safe Haven's success as Hope and Melody's legacy. They still didn't understand. It wasn't their legacy to celebrate. They'd forfeited that right when they'd chosen champagne over condolences, achievement over attendance, a party over a funeral. Standing in my office now, 7 years after the fire, I look at the wall of photos. Not of my biological family, but of the families we've saved. Hundreds of them. Children who got to grow up. Parents who got to grow old. Lives that continued because 2 lives ended too soon. Melody would have been 34. Hope would have been starting 1st grade, probably bossy and brilliant like her mother. Instead, they're forever frozen at 27 and 3 weeks, a tragedy that became a purpose, a loss that became a legacy. My mother was right about one thing on that horrible morning when she called about Instagram aesthetics while I stood outside the funeral home. She said, "We can't miss the celebration." She was right. We couldn't miss the celebration. We just celebrated the wrong lives at the wrong time, and that's a mistake that can never be undone, only outlived by the thousands of families who wake up each morning because 2 people didn't. This is their story. This is Safe Haven's story. This is why every second matters when protecting who you love. Because the people who should protect you, who should show up for you, who should choose you, sometimes won't. And when they don't, you build something from that absence that their presence never could have created. Thank you for watching this story. If it moved you, if it made you think about the choices we make and the priorities we set, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below about a time when someone showed up for you when it mattered most, or when they didn't. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel for more stories that explore the complicated truth of family, loss, and the unexpected paths to purpose. Remember, your presence in someone's worst moment matters more than your attendance at their best. Choose accordingly.